So I'm an electrical engineer. I live in Champaign, same city as Lippold. And I work at CU Aerospace, and I do hardware and software design for spacecraft and telemetry software and things like that. So I met Lippold in 1990 when I went to work at the Sorrel Lab, which was a computer-based education research lab at the University of Illinois. And I helped them on some of the really early versions of the Continuum on the hardware. So this is a video from 1991. This is on YouTube if you want to check it out, of Lippold. Yeah. So this is an extremely early prototype there. That's like 3 or 4 notes of a Continuum, which had been built and was being scanned. So this video is interesting to watch. I don't think it has any sound, but there's a close-up on it. So I helped, like a year or later than this, I helped with a different version. It was very similar to this. But it had square bars. He didn't come up with the round bars until later. So here's a first full-scale prototype. So I designed these circuit boards here for this prototype, and they were done with Mac Draw because, at U of I, we don't mess around. So, yeah, but somehow the people that made PCBs on the U of I campus could deal with Mac Draw files. So that's how I did it. And so here's the full scale. So that's, it's, aluminum around there, and the surface at the time was black cloth because it wasn't until later that Lippold came up with the neoprene idea.
Those are annual aluminum from the local pharmacy.
Yeah.
It's not the same now, it just looks great.
So he's been at this long. So this is still 13 years later after you thought of the idea, right? So, yeah. So it's 13 years after that. Oh, okay, great, thank you. Okay, so in 2004, we were testing some software, and Lippold noticed that I seemed to pick the Continuum up pretty quickly, so he asked me to go with him to NAMM shows, so we went to several of those. So there's me playing for Bob Moog in 2004. So I guess he passed away about a year after this, maybe 6 months or so.
Do you remember anything that he said at that moment, or not really?
He was laughing while I played, and then I was playing. I had this, this is a Roland sound canvas, and I was just using like a Rhodes sound, but so I could only do so many bends and stuff, but would just do this real quick thing where I could show everybody what it could do in about 30 seconds. But he laughed, and then I asked him if he wanted to play it, and he said no and walked away. So don't have a good story about that. So here's me. I also play the Chapman stick, which is this thing here. And so that was invented by Emmett Chapman. It's kind of it's an electric guitar-like instrument that you tap on to make, instead of plucking a string like on your guitar, you tap on it. And so there's Ed in the back. It's me with my totally hot red tie. So there's Emmett Chapman. So he came by to visit, and he had this idea about when you first pick up an instrument, you should just kind of go nuts and do what you want it to feel like and not worry about the notes. And then after that, then learn how to play, but doing it the same way. That's what he's doing here, is swishing his hands around on the Continuum, as if it's the first time, because it is. So here's me with the inventors of the 2 instruments I was playing in the other shot. I think this is the only white Continuum that was ever made, right? Is there only one?
So somebody wanted it for a wedding.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's cool. So yeah, there's Rudis. So he came by and played. I played the stick while he was playing the Continuum there. And Stevie Wonder. This is 2005. Stevie Wonder came by and tried it. So that was the big event of the NAMM shows that I've been to. But he thought it was interesting, but he said you should make this accessible to non-visual people. Is what he said. So I've come up with a way to do that since then. Maybe we should contact him. I don't know, but. Yeah, at the time it wasn't possible to feel where the notes were. I'll talk about that later. So there's Stevie again. So he was very polite, so that was good. Okay, so I've come up with a couple of ideas that I've been using for a long time. So yeah, I was going to have a slide here. I didn't have it, but the Loudest-Note-Priority Mono thing is something I made in Reactor first to do a saxophone-like legato sound and have whichever the loudest note is the one that you hear. So I played that over the phone for Lippold, and he got excited and implemented it in the Continuum firmware the same day, I think so. So I've been using that heavily ever since. So my horn sounds, I usually do things that are really, really simple. So I've gotten a lot of mileage out of this saxophone sound, which all it is a pulse wave and a filter that opens when you push, and then gain, it gets louder when you push, and that's all it is. And so there's a recording of me playing a modular Moog with the CVC from the Continuum. Okay, so I came up with this idea of doing this instant round pedal to help with playing fast passages with half-step transitions in them and have a quick transition between the notes. So I've been using that for a long time. So that's, I originally did it like this. I usually use round rate 110 and 127. 110 is for when you're not playing half steps and want to slide chords and stuff, and then 127 for doing the fast stuff. So eventually I came up with the idea of using a rocker pedal. It's actually more careful or more comfortable to do this. If you have to have your foot on a pedal for an entire set or something, it's easier to have it on one of these. Basically, the instant round is off most of the time, so your foot's back like that most of the time. And I came up with the idea of, like, instead of it switching in the center of the travel of the pedal, it switches just right after you back it off just a little bit. Instant round goes off. That allows you to, do it faster. So then later, I built this thing. So I figured I'd been using the rocker for a long time, and it worked pretty well. I'd been doing it in Reactor. I would take the MIDI CC and use that to do that threshold thing so that it's not in the center. But once I knew that it worked, it would be good to be able to do that without having Reactor there to do that. So I invented this thing. So all it is it's a circuit like that, and it's just has a relay that goes on or off when you rock your foot back a little bit, and there's a pot where you can set the exact point where you want it to go off. So I came up with a name with this. Lippold likes to refer to instant round as sterile pitch, So I thought, what do you use to sterilize things? An autoclave, right? So, but it's like a keyboard, so autoclap. So I thought that was a good name for it. It sterilizes the pitch. Okay, so there's the circuit. So I have one of those here. A lot of times I use two of them. And like when I'm doing my big band thing, I want to sometimes vibrato with one hand while doing a fast passage with the other hand, and so I'll switch back and forth. It really would be cool to have sound.
To be fair, Ed also called that oscillator that's built in the Egan matrix. He complained it was so clinical and horrible, but that's what I had. It's horrible. Clinical.
Yeah.
It was called the clinical oscillator for a long time.
I figure I should embrace it, It's like embrace the name. But so there's that. This is a video of me using it. You could watch my my red Converse here go. But so that's that. So I'm going to talk about the big band thing later. It's the most elaborate thing that I've ever built with Reactor. Pretty proud of it, but thought of the idea in 1999, and I got Reactor in 2000 and worked on it since then. But okay, so there's the ARP Axxe. So at 2007 NAMM, we wanted to demonstrate the CVC. So Ed and I both needed to have an analog synth there. So Ed is very specific about it. He likes everything to look perfect, and it's like the absolute top of the line stuff with all the cables are laid down nicely, and it looks great. And so he brought this, and I brought this. So Ed was horrified by this and tried to get me to hide it during my demo, but I left it out. So it's a 1975 ARP Axxe. For the amp, this is a Paya MIDI interface that I put into it. I took that out before the show, but I still have this little patch bay here. So there it is, and you've probably seen this demo video on NAMM 2007. So there's my Axxe there. So I just never had any other video get anywhere near as many views as this has had. So it's like if you add up the different copies of it that have been on there, it's like over 500,000 views. I guess it's a GearWire, where it's a very popular website. So after NAMM, I thought, Ed's right, this thing looks like crap, so why don't I fix it up? So yeah, I put the CVC inside it and put black paper there so it doesn't look quite as bad, And then ran some lines that go up to here, so they're normal switches. I tried using those normal jacks, but normal 3.5 millimeter jacks. I don't know, maybe they've improved, but the ones I was using then just absolutely sucked. So sometimes they connect both things, and sometimes they connect neither one, and you don't know. So I took out the normal jacks and put these switches in. So yeah, you can use Y to control, well, what's listed here. Just those things was a lot of help. So I added some circuits to allow you to use Y to control the depth of the pitch and the pulse width and the LFO speed. So here's the ARP Axxe in the Continuum on my stand. It's the same stand. I've been using it for probably 20 years. Okay, so before I started using Reactor at gigs, I used this setup where there's the ARP Axxe up here, and then I had this Nord modular here, 1999 Nord. And so it was 4-patch multi-timbral, so I could get 4 notes. That's better than only getting 1 note. So I used that at some gigs. So it was set up like this. Yeah, my ASCII characters don't quite line up. Okay, so yeah, so it's for 10 years I used a Continuum with no internal sound. So it's only MIDI coming out of there, and it goes into the CVC, which controls the Axxe, but then the audio of the Axxe went also through the Nord, so I could put mutes on my trumpets, basically. So here's, yeah. So I would have, checked this. Anyway, this is a video. This is on YouTube of us. It's a funk jam of my band, and I'm playing the Continuum. I learned something from this video. At the beginning of the video, I'm playing an organ sound with the Nord, and I'm sliding the notes all over the place because it's kind of like I felt like I needed to do that. But after listening to it, somebody posted a video. God, that pitch bending sounds terrible. But they're right. It sounded bad. So I after seeing that, I sort of dialed back on the use of pitch bends quite a bit. I'm just putting them in to show that you can do it. You shouldn't really do that. Okay, so some things happened here. This is Mark Rubel. So he owned a studio in Champaign for many years. And unfortunately, he just passed away recently. But he, after teaching in Champaign and recording thousands of bands, he moved to Nashville and was involved in this thing called Blackbird Academy, which was like a big recording, like a school where people can come learn to record. But in Champaign, he was here for years and years. So there's my, this is actually Photoshop. I didn't actually put these feet on. Yeah, I was using Reactor by this time, but the latency on soft synths was still pretty annoying at that time. So the CVC was so much faster than that. So for doing a percussive funk bass stuff, the CVC was great for that. So There's a couple of recordings of us just noodling while this class was recording this. But those are on my website. So this is Mark Rubel's Moog. And he got this in 2002, and I overhauled it for him. So I spent like weekends for a better part of a year taking the thing apart and cleaning all the pots and wiping the cigarette smoke off of the control panels and fixing blown transistors and stuff.
Where is it now?
He took it with him to Nashville, so I assume it's in Nashville. So it was a real pleasure to be able to do that. It was nice of him to trust me with that really expensive piece of hardware. So this is, I like looking at this because it's, this is a mini Moog. It's like it's the same thing everybody else hooks up to on, 2 oscillators and a filter. That's why it was so popular in a compact form, I guess. So in one of these guinea pig sessions, so I had this Continuum in the CVC, and I hooked it up to this Moog, and so we were playing blues tunes, and I was playing this Moog and trying to keep it in tune. And I started out trying to be tasteful, and ended up I'm just going to make weird noises now. There's a recording of this on YouTube. I kind of go nuts with the LFO and the FM and stuff. So I was doing with the Continuum, I was doing filter cutoff with Y, but then I was also with my hand turning the it was like LFO frequency for vibrato, making all kinds of crazy things happen. Okay, Tesla coils. So starting in 2008 at University of Illinois, we did Tesla coil concerts. So there was a student there named Steve Ward. So this is Steve. And he'd been doing this for a long time, designing these Tesla coils, and then you can make music with them. So each arc that it sends out makes a popping sound, and if you have many pops per second, you get a musical note. It's a very loud musical note. So we did that, and we decided to have a concert. It was at the Engineering Open House, which is a big event at University of Illinois where thousands of high school kids and grade school kids come in and see exhibits of engineering done by the students. So we did a big concert, and despite it being super cold, a lot of people showed up, so that was good. So Lippold actually, so Steve had built this box that converted MIDI into signals to drive the Tesla coil. And so Lippold wrote special, I gotta get away from the stand. Lippold wrote special firmware for my Continuum to talk to this box of Steve's. And so we had that set up. And so I was playing one coil directly from the Continuum, and then the other coil was being played by a pre-recorded MIDI track that I had of some music that I'd written. That's just not gonna happen. So there's a video of this on YouTube. So Ed took the video. He was there at the concert, and a lot of people showed up, and it was a pretty cool thing. We got the most popular exhibit that year.
I can concur. It was cold.
So yeah. Yeah, I had.
It would blow apart the individual arcs, so you had this nice, especially still pictures, you had nice pattern of arcs or something, but it was bitter.
I'll bet I can just play the video directly.
You also had problems with just getting enough power for the coil. It turned out the coils use a lot of power, and the buildings all are quite old there, so.
You just couldn't plug it into any regular wall outlet?
Hey, we have sound. Oh. Huh. I have to turn power from off this way. Huh. There we go. Okay, cool. So you get the idea. This is on YouTube too. So that.
Challenging because it's typical engineering open house style, like all the speakers, all the amplifiers, everything was built by students, some which were more skilled than others. And anyway, it was quite impressive. But Steve Ward went on to make a career out of doing Tesla concerts, and then it got to be a national thing afterwards.
Yeah, he was on a Jimmy Kimmel show. They did. He and these other guys made, it's like a Tesla coil gun. You put this thing on your backpack and then shoot, and it shoots sparks out. So Jimmy Kimmel and this other guy were shooting these things, and Steve was there helping Jimmy Kimmel put his thing on. Did I include that? I might include that in here. Okay, so yeah, that's on YouTube as well. Ed made this video, so he did a nice job of it by splicing together too. We actually played it twice because we'd advertised that it was going to be at 9 and also at 9:30, so we played the same thing twice. So Ed had better video
for a university, they couldn't get the time right, so they published it at different places, different times.
Yeah, so we did it twice. It was good because I only had 2 tunes. So so that went really well. Okay, so this is Scott Wyatt, who is the head of the experimental music studios at University of Illinois for many years. I worked for him in 1990 and worked on his Moog, so he had another one. So he saw this video and thought the EOH video and thought it was interesting. So he asked me to co-compose like an electroacoustic piece with him for Tesla coils. So we called it risky, I didn't want to call it risky business. He wanted to call it that, but I thought it would make people think of Tom Cruise dancing in his underwear, but it ended up we did get something kind of like that. I'll get to that. Okay, so for this piece, I decided I wanted to be able to make other sounds other than just a steady tone. So it came up with a system where they have the audio coming out of the computer that just has a bunch of pulses, and then each pulse that comes out of the audio tells the Tesla coil to fire an arc once, so it makes a pop. So then I could build reactor sounds to create these strings of pulses using different effects and get synthesizer sounds out of it. So yeah, this was a demonstration of, here's the control track that was coming out of the computer. Can I play it? Yeah, it was a demonstration of what the audio sounds like coming out of the computer, and then what the coil does in response to it, which sounds pretty much the same, but the coil is making because the arcs are flying all over the place, it's a much less clean sound. But I was able to get these different sounds out of the Tesla coil. So, okay, so we were performing at Seamus in Indiana in 2009. So that's the Society of Electroacoustic Music for the United States. So this piece was composed specifically for this event, and so we went to perform it, and when we did, something unusual happened. Okay, so yeah, this big buildup happens, the arcs get bigger and bigger, and then it stops and it gets quiet, and I play a very nice solo on the Continuum using my saxophone sound. So while I was playing this, this happened. That. So there it was, a streaker. I didn't think we had streakers. It was 2009. I thought it was the 70s.
You kind of needed that in there for scale, because I have no idea what size.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're about 7 feet tall. So yeah,
streaker for scale.
So some people probably thought it was part of the piece, but it wasn't. Yeah. Oh, okay. Thanks, I'm clumsy and I use this all. Okay, so yeah, this happens to this guy right behind me. Fortunately, you ran by right by the coil, but it was when it wasn't firing, so he didn't get hurt. So
That would have been funny.
So we have a, yeah, had some appendage burned off by the coil. But, so we have it's good that didn't happen, so we have a funny story instead of a tragic one.
Can you make that into a GIF?
Hey, if that's what you're into. You know.
And now for something completely different.
So once I figured out I could do oscillator sync with the Tesla coil, it became a necessity to do Let's Go by the Cars. So you get the idea. I love that song. I love that song. That's like the best pop song ever written, I think. Wait, or it's Hook. Talk about the hook. Okay, so yeah, there's that. So we did that several more concerts of those over the years.
No streakers?
That was the only streaker. So okay, yeah, that was Let's Go. So we performed the piece later at Krannert Center, so this is in Champaign. So this is this massive performer and arts center that we're lucky to have in a city as small as Champaign. On top of it, there's this kind of amphitheater where sometimes the marching band plays and stuff. So we did our Tesla coil concert in there, so it's also a little more secure because any streakers would have to climb over this thing first to get in. And there's a good recording of this on YouTube. Actually, this is the only time where we had a sound system that was loud enough to be heard at the same time while the coils were going. Skot Wyatt worked right across the street and he brought his whole system. And so actually the video from a camera is actually balanced. In most of these videos, you hear the coil and the audio track is way in the background. And like the ones I posted, I had to mix the audio track back in because you couldn't hear it in the video because the coils are so loud. Anyway, this is the definitive performance of the piece, if you want to see it. No streakers and the sound is a lot better. So. Okay, so a couple of times I played with symphony orchestras. So the first one is for this piece, Final Alice by David Del Tredici. So the U of I Symphony was doing this. Oh, am I running over? Okay, okay. Okay, so this piece is a musical version of Alice in Wonderland, and for the place where Alice drinks the potions to grow or shrink, they wanted the kind of cliche theremin woo-woo sounds. The score calls for that. They couldn't find a theremin, so they called me. So I made the woo-woo sounds on the Continuum, and pretty easy gig. So got paid pretty well. Played my woo-woo sounds and then sat for 45 minutes patiently while the rest of the orchestra finished the rest of the piece. I was there with my Continuum and my super cool stand designed by Ed, and I went woo-woo, and that was it. Okay, so in 2010, this is Rudolph, who's Lippold's brother, who's a viola professor at U of I. So this is the CU Symphony, which is distinct from the U of I Symphony. They had their anniversary that year, and so he wrote a piece to commemorate the CU Symphony's anniversary called Quinqauenarium. So I got to be featured on the Continuum as a soloist. So let's see. We can play a little bit of that. So there's that. The piece is longer, but I don't have time to play it. But that was actually their sister Armgard's voice saying "Happy Birthday, CUS." So it's her voice being played on Lippel's instrument piece by Rudolph. So a lot of Hawkins involved in that project. Okay, so here's a video I did in 2011 of Handel's Hornpipe. People have probably watched this, I don't know, but I'm pretty proud of how it came out. It was, is it worth it for me to play part of it? Thank you. So that was the reason I was excited about playing that. I created this patching reactor when you play farther away, like in the top half of Y is greater than 1/2, then you get a string sound, but when you play Y is less than 1/2, then it's a brass sound. So the melody keeps changing between strings, trumpets, and trombones, so I could go like that and get that happen. So I use hardly any pitch bend in this video, so I think some people have, I've gotten negative comments on the video about using the Hawking Continuum for doing this because there's no pitch bends, but I have a rant about that, but I won't go into it. Okay. So yeah, here's the diagram of how the surface was set up. I've been using Reactor the entire time for the Continuum because I understand it, and for many years I was playing a Continuum with no internal sound, so I still don't understand the Egan matrix. So I'll get into it one of these days. But Reactor, I've spent so many thousands of hours on that I can do things faster. Okay, 2011. So this is Lou DiBello, and there's me in the back, lurking in the back like I usually was in this band. So this was a classic rock cover band. First, it started off playing Lou's tunes, and then it moved into doing classic rock covers. So this was like major. I mean, it probably played like 100 performances with this band. So this is where I really got my setup worked out and got a lot better at playing, and it forced me to come up with some ideas. So yeah, one thing I like to do was the distorted kind of Eddie Van Halen thing you heard at the beginning of that orchestra piece was just this. It's like 2 sawtooth oscillators, and you mix it, and then you have this filter that's sort of stuck in one place, but it resonance, and you put it through chorus first, and then distortion, and you get that Eddie Van Halen sound. So I use that a lot in this band. So there's one thing I did, which is, in Queen albums, they would record multiple overdubs of distorted guitar to get that, it's a very distinctive Queen sound. You can't do that on a guitar live because it requires separate distortion on each note. So I created a thing in Reactor that would do the harmony and then distort the notes separately. So it sounded a lot like Queen.
what you call reading some charts, baby.
It's us playing Auld Lang Syne, and I'm doing a harmony on it with it sounds like Queen playing Auld Lang Syne. So, okay, so later on we decided we want to do this tune "Sticks Fooling Yourself," and there's a big synthesizer solo in this. I was determined to play this on the Continuum, and it was kicking my ass. So I kept trying to play it, and I would keep hitting wrong notes all the time. So you're probably all familiar with that solo. And as I learned it, I realized a lot of it's ripped off from Lucky Man by Keith Emerson. So I came up with this idea of having a texture on the surface so you can feel where the notes are. Because it's, well, the guy who did the first two talks yesterday, whose name I can't remember now, he was talking about your pinky goes too far. That's what it was happening with me too. But I let him try this, and he said, "Oh, I hate it." So this stuff is fabric paint. It's called velveteen, and it's like you paint this stuff on, and then you hit it with steam from an iron, and it puffs up, and so it makes this ridge that you can feel. So I made this one here, which has got all the entire black keys are raised, and then the other ones are the lines between the keys are just lines. And so this was early in the Continuum development before Lippold came up with or found somebody that could print a good red and black lines on a long piece of stretchy material. He had some of these laser etched surfaces made, so it's like a thin group of lines there. So he could do that accurately, even though he couldn't get the black stripes with high contrast. So he had a ton of this stuff left over, and he just gave me this huge pile of it, and I started experimenting with paint. So thank you for doing that. So yeah, here's the one before, and this is the soft velveteen. So that's what it looks like from the side. So it kind of feels like velvet. After using this for a while, it became a little annoying that going across like that, there was kind of friction on it. So I painted a different type of paint on top of that was slicker called Tulip. So this is that. It's shinier, and so you can slide over it easier.
Would you, if you had to do it over again, would you put that top stuff on by itself, or would you still put the layer on?
Oh, you have to have the underneath layer. Like the top stuff by itself, you can't feel it very well. So you need the underneath layer to puff it up, and then the slick stuff on top. So I was finally able to play this solo. This was I got over a big hurdle here, so it was a. I was able to hit the notes finally, so there's that. So between that and the instant round pedal, I can do most of what I want to do if I just practice enough. So yeah, later on, I did a different version, which is, after a while, it started to annoy me that if you raise the entire black key, it makes it stiffer, so it's harder to do to vibrato on a black key than a red key. So I did these versions here, which is, this is so soft paint, which you can't feel, but then it has the velveteen on the edges so you can feel the ridges. That's what this one's like. The newer ones, of course, I don't have to paint this part because the actual surfaces have. This is one of the laser etched ones with the paint added. So this is really, really good. It works really well. You can still slide over it, but I get a place for my notes to get reference. So this is this one that I have here. It's a new thing. On the new ones, I don't have to do anything except put it on the edge. So I've tried to interest other Continuum players in this, but it seems like nobody is. So, but it's helped me a lot. So.
I bought the paint. I bought the paint.
Oh, you did?
That's as far as I
Okay. I can paint you one if you want. If you've had the paint for a long time, don't use it because of. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, running out of time. Oh wow. Okay. All right. Let's do lasers. Lasers. Well, I'll talk a little bit first, and then that. Okay. So you know all this stuff. Okay, vector synthesis. So this term is used to describe two different things. They're very different from each other. One is these synths that were made in the 80s, where you use a joystick to program envelopes in, and then it'll play the envelopes back. But there's the other thing, which is called, sometimes called oscilloscope music, but is also called vector synthesis, where you have a circuit that's drawing a picture, and it's also sending sound out of the x and y coordinates of the picture as it draws it. So you're seeing and hearing the synthesizer at the same time. So this is Battlezone. This is my favorite video game as a 13-year-old. And these older Atari games were made with a vector display, which instead of a raster scans and does the whole thing every time, the vector display just draws the lines that it needs to. In the early 80s, you could get a finer resolution image with the vector display. So this in the 3D graphics on this, I was just amazed as a 13-year-old. So so yeah, in Reactor, there's this module called the XY module, and it has a mode where you can make it act like a oscilloscope in XY mode. And I was like, hey, you can make Battlezone. So yeah, there's a video here of maybe it'll run it if I just see if that works. Oh, there we go. So there's my Reactor Battlezone. So this is, it goes through a bunch of different shapes. I had the shapes programmed in and then scan across, calculates 3D rotations and everything, and then scans it. So here's some of those. You're hearing the dot as it draws the picture. In the left channel, you're hearing the, oh, I should talk about that. In the left channel, you're hearing the X coordinate. In the right channel, you're hearing the Y coordinate. It draws the picture at audio frequency so you can hear it drawing. So that's vector synthesis. So I thought of that idea myself, and then only much later realized that people had been doing that for a long time, and it was calling it vector synthesis. So we were at an AM show, and I showed this to, was it Stephen Schmidt from Native Instruments? He was kind of, yeah, he was kind of freaked out by the things I'd made. But so this is what led to the laser thing that you're going to see. Okay, in 2021, I started working at CU Aerospace, and so one of the things that we're doing is we're developing this satellite called the duplex satellite. So it has a unit inside it called the ADAX, which is what keeps the satellite pointed in the right direction. It has rotating wheels in it to tell the satellite, if you spin a wheel, the satellite goes the opposite direction. So yeah, I had a better picture of there's simulation software that goes along with the ADAX, which is written in Fortran and makes this really awful image and doesn't record any. You can't play the simulation back. You can't do anything. So I decided to write a simulation visualization program that would take this text file and display it. So of course that looks like Battlezone. So I even used Atari font here on the Axxe. So here's a simulation being played back. So these things actually move very slowly. You're watching it at 100 times actual speed. So reaction wheels don't turn very quickly. So of course I put Atari font on there. It's good to have a wireframe image anyway, so you can see the axes through it. Like the green axes are where the satellite's at, and the red ones is the attitude that you commanded it to go to. And the pink is Earth's magnetic field, and the yellow is the sun, and then the RAM is so the satellite's orbiting in this direction, and nadir is the Earth, which is below. So yeah, I was happy with how it came out. It's useful and cool, and yeah, some co-workers noticed that it looked like Battlezone. Okay, so this is Joy Yang. So she's a virtuosic piano player and thereminist who came to the University of Illinois to get her PhD in piano. And also she was interested in interdisciplinary work. So a couple of times I worked on her theremin when it broke, and I was showing her the simulation stuff that I did, and she was interested in that because she's into interdisciplinary art. So she asked me to play in her group, which is called the Interdisciples. So yeah, so it's 2 poets and 2 dancers and several visual artists, and Jason Finkelman's doing all kinds of different instruments, and I was doing geometric shapes and playing the sound from the Continuum. So this is I figured out a different way to do Reactor in 3D where it draws the color pictures, but there's a module that'll do colors that won't do scope traces, and one that's monochrome that'll do scope traces. Anyway, so I was doing this with this group. That probably is visible with the 3D glasses. Does it work? So this is a morphing between different shapes. That's our satellite. I threw that in there. So at this concert, I was doing that, and there's a guy named Matt Harsh who was doing all these video projections here, and then he was mixing my geometric shapes in with it. So yeah, the second set was 3D, so we gave the glasses to the audience, and they enjoyed that, and so there's happening. Okay, so after this concert, this guy Jake, that's in the band, he said, this guy said, you should use this to control a laser. And I was like, a laser? So I went down a total rabbit hole, and it's all his fault. So there's a laser projector, and they have a connector on the back called an ILDA connector. And this whole thing is analog. So it's like you send voltages in there, and it's like X, Y, red, green, and blue, and then a shutter to open it, and that's it. All you have to do is send voltage in. It's not like MIDI where it's a digital protocol where you have to have some kind of computer happening. So all you got to do is I have an audio interface that has DC coupled outputs, which means you can tell it to send 2 volts and it'll stay at 2 volts. And I just ran that right into here. So this box here, the Mo2 audio interface is here, and then this box on top is taking those signals and then putting them into the DB25 connector that's on the back there. And it was actually pretty easy to set it up. So I was pleased about that. Here's the synth being tested. But as you can tell, it doesn't translate to video. If you have a video camera that has a short exposure time, it never draws the red and green at the same time. So I don't know how it's going to show up on our video today. We'll see. Okay, so we did another concert. This is the Interdisciples, and it was Joy's PhD recital. So at this concert, I had my laser already, and then it died right before the concert. But here are some pictures of what other people were doing while I was trying to fix my laser, which was pretty cool. So Matt's got his projections going, and I'd given him some video of my stuff, and he'd mixed together a bunch of other stuff. He's projecting all over the walls of this auditorium, and so there's some more of that. But yeah, there's me trying to get my laser to work. So I included my simulation video in this thing, and so he projected that during part of the performance. Okay. So, I just want to talk a little bit about this. This is, I'm really privileged to play with this group of people because it's largely improvisational, and it'd be easy for somebody to try to dominate and take over, but everybody listens to each other and reacts, and it's really great. Okay, so now I'm going to try to do the actual performance. Let's see if we can get this to work.
Can we lower the lights?
Mark, did you want these lights down here?
Oh, yeah.
I only got a radio chair.
Russ, is that possible that we?
All right. Yeah, I guess that needs to do that a little bit. going to interrupt the piece for a second to change patches because I didn't get that set up in time. So. So, yeah. I can explain a little bit. Okay. Oh, there it is. Okay. So yeah, here's what's going on. This is these are sine waves being generated, and there's LFOs that are controlling the rotation and everything. And you can rotate it and around. But when it gets really interesting is when you add flanging. I guess that's the performance. Thank you. I was going to do something more elaborate, but I wasn't ready. So, so any questions about any of this stuff? Yes?
So is that basically like a Lisa Zhu meter, but in 3D?
Yeah, that last one was, I started out with that idea of doing, sine waves. There's sine wave oscillators that are doing X, Y, and Z. And then there's a module that's calculating the two views based on those three-dimensional coordinates. So that's where I got the idea for that last one. There's one that does geometric shapes, and one that does dots, and one that does sine waves. So anything else? So thanks for staying.